Hi everybody, I'm standing in front of this vacant lot that's behind my house, and I'm using it as an illustration for this class today, which is about creativity and creation. Hope you enjoy it. This class is about cultivating creativity as a Christian practice. We may not think of creativity as a Christian practice, but that's what we're going to talk about. First, to set the stage, we're in the middle of a pandemic as I'm recording this, and many of us are under shelter-in-place orders. So we're at home. We might be working from home or just staying at home as much as possible. Some of us may be essential workers going to jobs, but still are home the rest of the time. Some are alone, some are with families. There are a lot of different kinds of spiritual disciplines that might be in effect during a shelter-in-place order. Things like patience or generosity with ourselves and with others, self-restraint or self-discipline as we're stuck at home with more and more burdens on us and fewer things to distract us. Things like prudence, things that help us make good choices for the future, even as we don't know what the future is. Forbearance, caring for one another and being patient and kind to one another in the midst of trying circumstances. But creativity? That's not always on this list. But it seems like something that could be of great use in a pandemic, not to mention the rest of the time. So first of all, what is a Christian discipline or practice? One book says things that Christian practices are things Christian people do together over time to address fundamental human needs in response to and in light of God's active presence for the life of the world. There are a few different things about this that are important. One is that practices are formational. They're things we do that help orient us towards God's ways of being in the world. So they form us and shape us in particular ways so that we are more in tune with God. Practices also deepen our knowledge of the human beings and creation around us so that we respond to it in ways that God would want us to respond. And they also deepen our knowledge of the active presence and love of God in those communities. Practices help us be more aware of what is around us and of the presence of God around us. So traditional examples of these kinds of practices are things like hospitality or keeping the Sabbath, forgiving one another, discerning spiritually, giving our testimony, and participating in various forms of healing. These elements of Christian disciplines come out of this book that's at the bottom, Practicing Theology, Beliefs and Practices in Christian Life. So within that context, what is creativity? Well, most of us probably think first of things that are artistic: painting, drawing, sculpture, dance, various forms of performance. Creativity might also be design, so things like architecture or building, design of spaces, of lighting. Even math and equations can be forms of creativity. Creativity can also be in words, and it can put words and art together, so things like calligraphy, poetry, even music that marries words with sound, or emotions and different ways of expressing ourselves through music. Creativity can also reflect forms of self-expression. These all happen to be brightly colored forms of self-expression. We don't always think of it this way, but creativity can also be brainstorming or problem solving. We need creativity to deal with difficult problems that come up around us and with situations in which we find ourselves. So how do we bring these two things together, creativity and practice? Well, our habits and practices are lenses through which we see and understand the world. So they help us see things in new ways. As we are formed by our Christian practices, we are able to see in different ways how God is active and present in the world. Practices also shape our perceptions of meaning, purpose, and worth. So the ways in which we behave and the habits that we inculcate shape the way we understand things around us and what we see as worth our time or of value. So here's an example. This is not a Christian example specifically, but just an example of how our habits shape our understanding of worth. So this is trash, right? And this is trash. It might also be recycling, but in any case, it shouldn't be worth very much. Well, I grew up in a state that had a deposit on soda cans. So for me, each of these cans is worth a nickel in my mind, even though I no longer live in a state that has deposits. Even more, this is worth a dime. So bottles and cans in my mind are worth money. And it's because growing up, I was in a state that enforced in me a habit of thinking of these things as being worth money. So now when I see cans and bottles, even though I can't take them in for the deposit anymore, I see them as intrinsically valuable, which is a different way of seeing what otherwise might be considered trash. So Christian practices shape us also and shape the way we see purpose and value. And they are things we intentionally do for particular reasons. So they deepen our awareness of creation and creator. They address fundamental human needs like healing or feeding. They change and form us toward God's purposes. So they help us be oriented toward what God wants for the world. They align with God's mission of reconciliation. So they help us see how to reconcile and be peace builders in the world. And they help us develop and strengthen empathy, compassion, interconnectedness, and humility. Practices in ourselves that help orient us toward who God is and who we are to be together in the world. So how could Christian practices like the cultivation of creativity change the way we understand the meaning, purpose, and worth of what's around us? So put another way, how could creativity help us place value on things in the world that we might not think of as having very much value, especially in a time of pandemic? Just like the deposit on cans, how can creativity help shape our way of seeing what is important around us? So here are some things. Creativity as a Christian practice can awaken our curiosity and a desire to learn. Creativity helps us see things in new ways that make us curious. Creativity opens us to new possibilities. When we're in a creative frame of mind, we can see options we couldn't see before. That can help us respond faithfully in situations of complexity. So instead of seeing things as only right or wrong, good or bad, black or white, we can think in more nuanced ways about the complexity of the situations before us. And that can help us come up with better solutions, more comprehensive solutions. And creativity also reminds us of the power of diverse viewpoints, that when we have a lot of people together trying to solve problems, it can help give more perspectives that then lead to a better solution for more people. And creativity helps develop these things in us. So we're going to do a little practice of creativity right now. Don't run away. This is not difficult. Pull out your phone so you can set a little timer, and I'm going to give you a little thing, a little exercise to do for the next 30 seconds. So I'm going to show you what the exercise is, and then you can just pause the video so that you can take care of the exercise. There are two here, so maybe do 30 seconds on one and then let the video play so you can see the second one. So here's the first one. For the next 30 seconds, think of as many uses for a toothpick as you can, not just picking your teeth. All kinds of things you can do with a toothpick, as crazy as you want. Okay, so take 30 seconds to do that. And when you've finished with that first 30 seconds, here's another one. Reset your timer and try this one. For the next 30 seconds, name things that take place in less than 2 minutes. What are things that take place in less than 2 minutes? Okay, so you've now warmed up your creativity brain with those two exercises. Those are exercises that are the kinds of things that help us think creatively about opportunities around us. Just looking at normal items in our life, like a toothpick, and reimagining what it could be used for, or what we might have used it for in the past helps awaken that creativity in us. So here's another concept that goes with creativity. That's upcycling. You may have heard this term before. It comes up a lot on websites like Etsy and Pinterest. But the idea of upcycling is the idea of reusing a material, particularly what would otherwise be trash, so that what is created is of equal or greater value than the original material. So this is a way of rethinking things around us so that we see their value as greater than just something that's disposable. 100 years ago, a lot less around us was disposable or single use. And so we ended up with things like quilts made out of all kinds of fabric from used clothing, or from gunny sacks, or from flour sacks, from other things that had come into the house that could be then made into a quilt. This is upcycling, using those things that would otherwise be trash in new ways with greater value even than the original material might be. So we're going to think about upcycling as a way of engaging with creativity. So here's some disposable forks and spoons and knives. We see these every day. As many of us are getting takeout these days, it's even more, I think, that we have these lying around our house. And most of us would probably just throw them away. Well, if we think creatively, what else could we do with these plastic things besides just throw them in the garbage? Well, it's that time of year when a lot of people are planting things. So one option is to make them into plant markers. Or you could put together a candle holder. Or this giant art piece that has a mirror in the middle. Creative, right? Or how about this? Plastic bottles. One of the things that we keep hearing that the earth is saturated with are plastic bottles. Well, here are some creative uses. Bird feeder, pencil holder or pen holder, earrings. These are actually made out of milk bottles, milk cartons, or plastic flowers for other earrings. These are just slightly melted to make that curved color. Or how about the lids? These pictures come from South Africa. This is a big mural made out of lids that these women are sewing together. This was put together for the 2010 World Cup. These aren't the best photos, but hopefully you get the idea. So here's a whole bunch of the bottle lids sewn together. And here's the full mural where you can see kids running and playing. So that was up for the 2010 World Cup, and it was this initiative to use all these bottle caps. Bottle caps that otherwise would have been in the trash. Here's a different way of thinking about creativity and upcycling, the ways in which we use creativity to reassess value. So you may have seen these pictures in the New York Times. These are from a few years ago at the height of the refugee crisis. These are just photos of folks who are fleeing persecution and war, trying to get to a better life, maybe from Syria or from other places in that part of the world, moving toward Europe. You probably remember these stories, and they're still happening today. An organization in Germany put together an ad campaign that was designed to be about helping refugees who were coming to Germany. So you can see I'm standing on the left-hand side of this picture. This is in Stuttgart, Germany, where I was visiting my sister. And here's a big advertisement for this organization called Social B that's trying to help refugees who are arriving in Germany get jobs. So here's how they helped people rethink what a refugee offers. So you can see there's a sort of a silhouetted picture in front of people walking down railroad tracks. And what this says is, I'm resilient. At the Turkish border, we could go no farther. We had nothing to eat for 3 days. So what this ad campaign is trying to do is to show that this refugee from Turkey, or at least who had come to the Turkish border, has the skill of resiliency, and that could be something that you might want in your organization or company. And so you might want to consider hiring a refugee because of this kind of skill that they would bring. So this ad campaign is reimagining, using creativity to reimagine the worth and value of the refugees who are coming to town. Here's another one. This one says, I am team-oriented. I survived with 85 people on a small rubber raft. So you can see the raft picture in the front and then the refugee behind. And here's another one. This one says, I am goal-oriented. I was on the run for 3 months on foot. And you can see the silhouette of the person walking. So the idea here is that creativity helped this organization reimagine for people in Germany what refugees might bring, and helped them rethink the opportunities of hiring refugees and the skills that refugees might bring that might not be what you would first think of. So that's a lot to think about, all these different aspects of how creativity can be a Christian practice, how it can help us rethink value, how it can give us lenses for problem solving, for thinking about the worth and value of the things around us, and for re-seeing, for re-understanding, for reimagining the realities in which we live, so that we can imagine possibilities in a different way, so that we can engage with God's purposes more fully, so that even in the midst of a pandemic, we might have ideas that could be life-giving for ourselves, for our families, for those around us. So we're going to do a little bit more creativity now. This is meant to be fun. So I see you trying to sneak away. Don't. Because you couldn't do that if we were at church, and I was going to do the same exact class during the covenant time at church. So don't sneak away, just stick with me. This will be fun, I promise. No one is watching you, not even me, so just enjoy yourself. Now I'm going to give you a list of things to go gather from your house that I'm expecting you probably have sitting around the house. I'll give you a second to go get those. Just pause the video and you can get them, and then you can go to the next slide and, move forward in the video and see what I'm going to ask you to do with them. So here are the things I want you to get. Get a plastic spoon, fork, and knife, one of each. If you don't have one of each, that's okay. Just get 3 things. 3 plastic utensils will be fine. Get 1 jar or bottle lid. Doesn't matter what size or what type. It can be from a mason jar or milk bottle. Doesn't matter. Get 1 piece of string or yarn, maybe 10 or 12 inches long. Doesn't really matter the length, just a piece of string or yarn. Get a couple of paper clips. Again, size doesn't matter. Just get whatever you have on hand. Get a rubber band. And get a piece of paper. Here there's a piece of notebook paper. It doesn't matter if it's notebook paper, construction paper, just a piece of white paper out of the printer, scratch paper, doesn't matter. So go ahead and gather those things. You can pause this video so that you can gather those. And then when you get them all together, you can continue on the video. Okay, so you've got all your supplies together. Here's what I want you to do. With those supplies in front of you, I want you to take on one of these tasks, or you can do all 3 if you like. But here are some different options for what to do with those items that you've gathered from your house. And remember, the point of this is to help us envision in new ways the things around us so that we can be creative in our daily life, see life-giving possibilities where we maybe just saw trash or junk before, and just to have fun and be creative in this time. So here's the first one. A genie has granted you 1 wish. Using the materials available, create something that represents the fulfillment of your wish. So use those things and create something that is what you would want right now if you could have it. Okay, here's a second option. Using those materials, create something that makes a sound effect. Maybe something that could be used in a movie. You've got a rubber band, you've got spoons, you've got all kinds of different options there. So think about a sound effect that you could make. Or come up with a secondary use for one of the objects, something that is not its intended or primary purpose. So like we saw with those spoons that were used as garden markers, or all the different things you thought of to use a toothpick for, those are the kind of things we're thinking about. So pick 1 or 2 of those items and think about what it could be used for that's not its first or intended purpose. Of course, these are things you can do with kids. So if you've got kids around, bring them in, have them participate in this with you. This is something that can be done as a group too. So I encourage you to do any or all of these activities and then share with the folks who are around you what you decided to do and why and what you've created. So take your time, enjoy that. You can pause the video and come back if you want, or you can go to the end and then do the activity afterwards. So after you've had some time to do that activity, I encourage you to think about these questions as you reflect on the practice of creativity, and particularly creativity as a Christian practice, as a way in which we deepen our faith, deepen our knowledge of God and our engagement with God's purposes in the world. What's comfortable or inspiring about creative practices? What's difficult or what feels like an obstacle to engaging in practice? What's difficult for you about creativity? Where do you get blocked or have a difficult time? How does it feel to you to think of creativity as a Christian practice? Does it feel like something that's natural for you, or does it feel strange or not in fitting with how you understand what it means to express your Christianity? How might God be speaking to you in and through the practice of creativity? Is it a way in which you can express yourself more fully? Is it a way in which you might stretch or grow in your faith as you think about God being a creator and inspiring your own experiences of creation and creativity? So I hope you've enjoyed this participation in thinking about Christianity and creativity together, and how our practices of creativity can inspire and deepen our faith and might shift the ways we see the things in the world around us, particularly things that we might not see as having value. I encourage you to share the ways in which you're being creative in your own life with others, because together we can inspire one another in our creativity. Be well as you continue to live through this virus and work in your homes and keep social distance, knowing that creativity is a way in which we can open new possibilities and think in new ways about faith and life together.